Before we begin, let us know where you're listening from. After the story, rate it from 1 to 10. Now let's start. Vienna, 1847. The winter sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floors of Schönbrunn Palace as Emperor Ferdinand I of Austria made his way through the grand corridor, his footsteps echoing against the ornate walls. Behind him trailed his ever-present entourage, advisors with stern faces, ministers clutching important papers, and courtiers eager to catch any morsel of imperial favor. The Habsburg monarch moved with a slight awkwardness, his body bearing the marks of his epilepsy and the weight of an empire fracturing under nationalist pressures. Yet today, something else seemed to occupy his thoughts. His eyes, usually vacant or confused, held a peculiar clarity as he paused before the entrance to the imperial kitchens, a place no Habsburg emperor had reason to visit. "Your Imperial Majesty." Chancellor Metternich stepped forward, his voice low but urgent. "The delegation from Hungary awaits in the ceremonial hall. The matters of state can wait," Ferdinand interrupted with unusual firmness. "I wish to inspect the kitchens." The collective intake of breath from the court officials might have sucked all oxygen from the corridor. Count von Collerat, the emperor's other chief minister and Metternich's rival, exchanged puzzled glances with the master of the household. "The kitchens, Your Majesty?" Collerat repeated delicately. "Yes," Ferdinand replied. "I am told our new pastry chef has created something extraordinary for tonight's banquet. I wish to see it." This explanation, though unusual, provided a veneer of acceptability. The emperor was known for his childlike enthusiasms, his sweet tooth being one of them. The tension in the corridor eased, if only slightly, and the master of the household hurried ahead to announce the imperial visit to the unsuspecting kitchen staff. Below stairs, Sofia Krizek moved with practiced efficiency between the copper pots and roaring ovens. At 23, she had already spent 8 years in service to the imperial household, rising from scullery maid to assistant cook through determination and an innate understanding of flavors that bordered on magical. Her hands, though reddened from work, moved with the precision of an artist, her fingers pinching herbs and adjusting seasoning without measurement. "Sophia," the kitchen master's voice cracked through the steam-filled air. "Get those vegetables finished immediately. The second course must not be delayed." "Yes, Herr Weber," she responded, quickening her pace. The knife flashed under her skilled fingers, transforming humble carrots and turnips into delicate flowers and leaves. Sophia had learned early to make herself essential yet invisible. In the complex hierarchy of the imperial household, a kitchen maid from Bohemia, especially one whose father had been suspected of Republican sympathies during the unrest of 1830, needed to tread carefully. Her mother had secured her this position through connections from her own days as a lady's maid, extracting a promise that Sophia would remain unnoticed and unblemished by court politics. The kitchen doors suddenly swung open with violence. The master of the household stood there, face flushed and eyes wide. "His Imperial Majesty approaches. Everyone to attention. Clean those surfaces. Hide those scraps." The kitchen erupted into frantic activity. Pots were whisked away, spills were mopped, and aprons were hastily straightened. Sophia quickly wiped her hands and tucked a loose strand of chestnut hair back under her cap, her heart hammering. In 8 years, she had never seen the emperor in person. When Ferdinand entered, the entire kitchen fell to deep bows and curtsies, eyes fixed on the floor as protocol demanded. Sophia lowered herself with the others, the weight of imperial presence pressing down like a physical force. "Rise," came the slightly slurred command, and the kitchen staff straightened, still avoiding direct gaze with their sovereign. Ferdinand moved slowly through the kitchen, guided by the head chef who trembled visibly while describing the evening's elaborate menu. The emperor nodded occasionally, showing surprising interest in the preparation methods. Sophia kept her eyes downcast, focusing on the vegetables before her. The imperial entourage was approaching her station, and she silently prayed to become invisible, to blend into the steam and shadows. "And what is being prepared here?" The emperor's voice was suddenly close, too close. "Simple vegetable garnishes, Your Majesty," the head chef answered quickly. "Nothing worthy of imperial attention." Sophia felt the weight of eyes upon her and risked the slightest upward glance. To her horror, she found the emperor staring directly at her, his Habsburg lip prominent in his puzzled expression. "You," he said, pointing a finger. "Look up." The kitchen fell silent. Sofia slowly raised her head, her green eyes meeting the Emperor's pale blue ones in a breach of protocol that could cost her position. The moment stretched, taut with tension. "What is your name?" Ferdinand asked. "Sofia Krizek, your Imperial Majesty," she replied, her voice barely audible. "And what are you making with such care?" he asked, gesturing to her knife work. "Flowers, your Majesty, for the Tafelspitz presentation." "Flowers from turnips," Ferdinand mused, picking up one of her carved creations. "Beautiful, like edelweiss from the mountains." Behind him, Chancellor Metternich cleared his throat meaningfully. "Your Majesty, the Hungarian delegation." "Yes, yes." Ferdinand waved a hand dismissively. "Show me the pastries now." The Imperial party moved on, leaving Sofia breathing again. The head chef gave her a warning look, as if her existence had somehow invited Imperial disruption. She returned to her work, hands slightly trembling, trying to ignore the whispers already beginning among the kitchen staff. She did not notice the Emperor glance back at her, nor the thoughtful expression that crossed his face. 3 days later, Sofia was summoned to the office of the household steward, a summons that sent cold fear through her veins. Kitchen maids were rarely noticed by management unless they had committed some grave error. She smoothed her apron with damp palms before knocking at the imposing door. "Enter," came the clipped response. Inside, the steward sat rigid behind his desk, his face unreadable. Beside him stood Baron Sturg, the Emperor's personal secretary, whose presence elevated Sofia's anxiety to near panic. "Sofia Krizek," the steward began formally. "You have been selected for a special assignment within the Imperial household." She blinked, confusion replacing fear. "Sir, His Imperial Majesty has taken note of your artistic abilities with food presentation," the Baron explained, seeming to find the words distasteful. "He has requested that you be assigned to prepare a daily small plate of fruits and sweets for his private consumption." Sofia's mouth fell open before she quickly composed herself. "There must be some mistake. I'm only an assistant cook, not even properly trained in confectionery." Nevertheless, the steward cut in. "This is the Emperor's wish. You will report to the small kitchen adjacent to the Imperial apartments each morning at 9. You will prepare the offerings, present them personally, and leave immediately. You will speak only if spoken to. You will maintain absolute discretion about anything you might see or hear. This is a grave responsibility," Baron Sturg added. "One misstep, one word out of place, and you will find yourself not merely dismissed but possibly imprisoned. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," Sofia whispered, her mind reeling. "You begin tomorrow," the steward concluded. "You are dismissed." That night, Sofia lay awake in the small bed she shared with another kitchen maid in the servants' quarters, staring at the ceiling. Imperial favor was as dangerous as imperial displeasure. Court history was littered with servants who had risen too quickly only to fall catastrophically. Yet refusing was impossible. One did not decline an emperor's request. What did the steward want? Her bedmate, Magda, whispered in the darkness. Sofia hesitated. "Additional duties," she replied vaguely. "Nothing important." The lie felt strange on her tongue, but the warning about discretion had been clear. She turned onto her side, pulling the thin blanket tighter around her shoulders, and tried to quiet her racing thoughts. The next morning found her in a spotless kitchen she had never entered before, located in a wing of the palace where servants of her rank never ventured. A stern-faced lady-in-waiting provided curt instructions, then left her alone with an assortment of the finest fruits, chocolates, and pastries. Sofia worked meticulously, arranging a small selection that emphasized beauty over quantity. She carved paper-thin slices of apple into rose shapes, placed tiny violets from the imperial greenhouse onto dark chocolates, and drizzled honey in delicate patterns. When finished, she placed the creation on a silver tray and followed the path she had been shown to the emperor's study. The guard outside announced her, and she entered with her eyes appropriately lowered, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain it echoed in the vast room. "Ah, the flower maker," Ferdinand said, his voice warmer than it had been in the kitchens. "Your Imperial Majesty." Sofia curtsied deeply, holding the tray steady with practiced hands. "Place it there," he indicated a small table near the window. and tell me what you've prepared." Sofia set down the tray and described each item in a quiet, clear voice, still not looking directly at the emperor. When she finished, she stepped back and waited for dismissal. "Stay a moment," Ferdinand said instead. "Watch me try your creation." This was unexpected and slightly alarming. Sofia remained where she stood, hands clasped before her, as the emperor selected one of the apple roses and examined it closely before taking a bite. "Remarkable," he said after a moment. "Simple ingredients transformed by attention and care." He looked at her directly. "How did you learn this skill?" "My grandmother taught me, Your Majesty," Sofia answered truthfully. "She said beauty could be found anywhere if one looked with the right eyes." "Wise woman," Ferdinand nodded. "And are you happy in the Imperial kitchens, Sofia Krizek?" The directness of the question startled her into looking up. The emperor was watching her with genuine curiosity, his head slightly tilted. "It is an honor to serve the Imperial household, Your Majesty," she replied automatically. A slight smile crossed Ferdinand's face. "That is not what I asked." Sofia hesitated, caught between protocol and unexpected honesty. I am grateful for my position, Your Majesty. The work suits my abilities." "But does it satisfy your spirit?" he pressed. The question was so unexpected, so philosophically intimate, that Sofia found herself answering truthfully before she could consider the wisdom of doing so. "Not entirely, Your Majesty. I find joy in creating beauty from simple things, but in the main kitchens, speed is valued over artistry." As soon as the words left her mouth, she felt color rise to her cheeks. She had spoken too freely to the Emperor of Austria, King of Hungary and Bohemia, ruler of an empire. To her surprise, Ferdinand nodded thoughtfully. "I understand more than you might imagine, Sofia Krizek. Now, you may go. Return tomorrow at the same time." She curtsied deeply and backed toward the door, wondering if she had just ruined everything or somehow passed a test she hadn't known she was taking. The days fell into a pattern. Each morning, Sofia prepared small, artistic arrangements of sweetmeats and fruits. Each morning, the emperor would ask her to stay while he sampled her work. Each morning, he would ask her questions about her family, her thoughts on music when the palace orchestra was practicing nearby, her opinion on the changing seasons visible through his study window. At first, her answers were guarded and formal. Gradually, as weeks passed with no repercussions, she began to speak more freely. She told him of her childhood in a small Bohemian village, of her father who had taught her to read despite her mother's protests that literacy would make her discontent with a servant's life, of her dreams of someday having a small garden of her own. Ferdinand, in turn, shared small confidences. He spoke of the weight of the imperial crown, of his frustration with ministers who treated him as a figurehead, of his genuine love for his wife despite their childless marriage. He never overstepped propriety, never touched her or made inappropriate suggestions. But in those brief morning conversations, something uncommon was growing. Understanding between two people separated by an unbridgeable social divide. "Do you know," Ferdinand said one spring morning in 1848, "I look forward to these few minutes each day more than any other appointment in my imperial calendar." Sofia, now more comfortable in his presence though still mindful of her position, smiled slightly. "Your Majesty honors me greatly." "No," he shook his head. "You misunderstand. It is not merely your culinary artistry that I appreciate, though it is considerable. It is that you speak to me as Ferdinand, not as emperor. Do you know how rare that is?" Before Sofia could formulate a response to this dangerous statement, the door burst open and Chancellor Metternich entered without announcement, his face gray with tension. "Your Majesty, revolution in Paris. Louis Philippe has abdicated. The Republic has been declared." Ferdinand rose swiftly, all trace of the gentle man vanishing behind imperial authority. "We will discuss this immediately. Summon the council." Sofia, suddenly invisible again, slipped from the room as ministers and military officers poured in. In the corridor, she pressed herself against the wall, heart racing. The world was changing around them. Revolution in France meant unrest throughout Europe. Even in the sheltered world of palace service, she had heard the whispers of discontent, the demands for constitutional reform, the nationalist stirrings in Hungary, Bohemia, and Italy. In the days that followed, Sofia's morning visits continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Ferdinand looked haggard, aged beyond his 55 years. The conversations were briefer, more subdued. Through careful listening to palace gossip, Sofia learned that Vienna itself was restless, with students and workers demonstrating for reforms. On March 13th, she arrived at the emperor's study to find it empty except for the Empress Maria Anna, Ferdinand's devoted wife. "Your Imperial Majesty." Sofia curtsied deeply, confused and alarmed. "Place the tray on the table, child," the Empress said quietly. Her face was drawn with worry, her normally perfect coiffure slightly disheveled. Sofia obeyed, then waited uncertainly. "My husband thinks highly of you," the Empress said after a moment. "He says you see beauty where others see only utility." "His Majesty is very kind," Sofia replied carefully. "He is besieged on all sides," Maria Anna continued. "Metternich has fled. The Hungarians demand autonomy. There are barricades in the streets of Vienna." She fixed Sofia with an intense gaze. "The emperor needs allies he can trust, even in the humblest positions." Sofia felt the weight of unspoken meaning in the empress's words. "I live to serve the imperial house, Your Majesty." Maria Anna nodded slowly. "Good. Remember that in the days ahead." She gestured toward the door. "You may go." That evening, word spread through the servants' quarters like wildfire. The imperial family was leaving Vienna, fleeing the revolution that had overtaken the capital. They would retreat to Innsbruck, where loyalist forces remained strong. "Will you go with them?" Magda asked as they prepared for bed, the room buzzing with anxious whispers. Sofia shook her head. "I haven't been summoned. Only the essential household staff will travel." The admission brought a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. Relief that she would not be caught in the dangerous political currents swirling around the emperor. Disappointment that her brief, unusual connection to Ferdinand would end without farewell. But at midnight, a palace guard appeared at the servants' dormitory, requesting Sofia's immediate presence. Heart pounding, she followed him through darkened corridors to a small side entrance where a plain carriage waited. "Get in," the guard ordered. "Take only what you're wearing. Say nothing to anyone." Before she could protest, Sofia found herself bundled into the carriage. Inside sat Baron Sturg, the emperor's secretary, his face grim in the dim lantern light. "The imperial family departed 3 hours ago by the main gate, with full ceremony," he explained without preamble. "That procession is a decoy. The emperor and empress will actually leave at dawn by a different route. You have been personally requested to join the reduced household staff accompanying them." Sofia's mind reeled. "But why?" "It is not your place to question," Sturg interrupted sharply. "Only to obey. The emperor finds your presence calming. The empress believes this beneficial to his health during these troubled times." The carriage delivered them to a nondescript townhouse where Sofia was ushered into a small room and told to rest until called. Sleep proved impossible. Revolution, flight, imperial favor, the concepts swirled in her mind like leaves caught in a whirlwind. By first light, she had resolved to do her duty with the same quiet competence that had brought her this far, whatever strange path lay ahead. The journey to Innsbruck was tense and secretive, conducted in stages through the Austrian countryside. Sofia found herself in an unprecedented position, still a servant, but now one of only a dozen attending the imperial couple directly. She prepared not only sweetmeats, but simple meals, worked alongside the empress's personal maid, and observed the strain taking its toll on Ferdinand, whose epileptic attacks increased with the stress. During one such episode in a provincial manor house where they had stopped to rest, Sofia was the only attendant present besides the empress. Without thinking, she rushed to help Maria Anna ease the emperor onto a chaise, supporting his head and speaking soothingly as her father had once done for a village child with the same affliction. When the seizure passed, Ferdinand looked up at her with clarity returning to his eyes. "Sofia," he murmured, "you're still here." "Yes, Your Majesty," she replied softly. "I remain at your service." The empress's hand came to rest briefly on Sofia's shoulder, a touch that crossed boundaries of rank but conveyed unmistakable gratitude. In Innsbruck, a semblance of court life resumed, though with fewer formalities and a smaller retinue. Sofia found her role expanding beyond kitchen duties. The empress requested her help with correspondence, discovering that the kitchen maid's literacy extended to a fine hand and good composition. Ferdinand asked for her presence during his afternoon walks in the private gardens, ostensibly to discuss menu preferences, but increasingly to share observations about nature, architecture, and occasionally, carefully, politics. "They wish me to abdicate," he confided one autumn day in 1848, as they walked between rows of late-blooming roses. "My own family believes my nephew Franz Joseph would present a stronger image against the revolutionaries." Sofia, now accustomed to these surprising confidences, but still aware of her precarious position, chose her words with care. "Does your Majesty wish to relinquish the crown?" Ferdinand sighed deeply. "The crown has never fit comfortably, Sofia. I was not born with my father's forcefulness or my grandfather's military genius. I have always known others ruled through me rather than by me." He paused beside a white rose, touching its petals gently. "Yet there is duty. There is family honor. There is the oath I took. And there is also wisdom in knowing one's true nature," Sofia said quietly. "My father once told me that the strongest tree is not the one that never bends in the wind, but the one that knows how to bend without breaking." Ferdinand looked at her with surprise, then thoughtful appreciation. "Your father sounds like a philosopher, he stopped abruptly. "Not a suspected revolutionary." Sofia finished with a small smile. "He was both, Your Majesty. He believed in the dignity of all people, but also in the wisdom of finding one's proper place in the world and filling it with honor." "And have you found your proper place, Sofia Krizek?" Ferdinand asked, his gaze intent. The question hung between them, laden with meanings neither could safely express. Sofia looked away, toward the mountains surrounding Innsbruck. "I believe I am where I am meant to be at this moment, Your Majesty. Beyond that, who can say?" The Emperor nodded slowly. "Indeed, who can say what paths lie before any of us?" When December came, the path became clear. Ferdinand signed the instruments of abdication, transferring imperial power to his 18-year-old nephew, Franz Joseph. The official ceremony took place in the Archbishop's palace at Olmütz, with the imperial family and high officials in attendance. Sofia, watching from a servant's gallery, felt a complex mixture of emotions as Ferdinand removed the crown for the last time. That evening, now Emperor Ferdinand only in courtesy title, he requested a private audience with Sofia. She found him in a small study, more relaxed than she had ever seen him, though tinged with melancholy. "So ends my imperial duty," he said as she entered. "Tomorrow we depart for Prague, where I will live out my days as a private citizen, or as private as a Habsburg can ever be. I wish Your Majesty peace and contentment in the years ahead," Sofia said sincerely. "And what of you, Sofia? Will you return to the kitchens in Vienna?" She hesitated. "I haven't received instructions, Your Majesty." Ferdinand paced to the window and back, a nervous energy animating his movements. "I have a proposition for you. Come to Prague as part of my household, not as a kitchen maid, but as a personal secretary to both myself and the Empress. Your literacy, discretion, and understanding of human nature would be valuable to us in our retirement." Sofia stood very still, processing the offer. It was unprecedented, a kitchen maid elevated to personal secretary, remaining in the household of the abdicated emperor. It would mean leaving behind everything familiar, stepping into a role for which she had no training, inviting scrutiny and resentment from those who would see her rise as undeserved. "The Empress approves this arrangement?" she asked carefully. "It was her suggestion," Ferdinand replied with a small smile. "Maria Anna has come to value your calm presence as much as I do." Sofia took a deep breath. "Then I accept with gratitude, Your Majesty." "Good." Ferdinand nodded, relief evident in his face. "Very good." The imperial residence in Prague Castle became their home for the next 10 years. Ferdinand, freed from state responsibilities, devoted himself to his collections of plants and minerals. The Empress, always pious, spent more time in prayer and charitable works. Sofia found herself in the unexpected position of liaising between the retired imperial couple and the outside world, managing correspondence, organizing the small household, and gradually becoming indispensable to both. Her relationship with Ferdinand remained proper, but deepened in understanding. They spent hours discussing books from his extensive library, which he encouraged her to use freely. He taught her about botany during walks in the castle gardens. She, in turn, continued to create beautiful arrangements of food and flowers that brightened his increasingly sedentary days as his health declined. Rumors circulated, of course. Servants gossiped about the former kitchen maid who had the ear of the abdicated emperor. Visiting nobility raised eyebrows at her position. But the empress's clear approval and Sofia's unfailing propriety gradually silenced the worst of the speculation. In the spring of 1859, Ferdinand's health took a severe turn. Bedridden and weakening daily, he asked for Sofia's presence more frequently, often just to read to him or sit quietly nearby. The empress, herself unwell, shared nursing duties with Sofia. The two women united in their care for the gentle man. Both had come to love in their different ways. "He speaks of you constantly when you're not here," Maria Anna confided one evening as they prepared tisanes in the small medicinal kitchen adjacent to the imperial bedchamber. "You brought a light into his life that court formalities always extinguished." Sofia kept her eyes on the herbs she was measuring. "His Majesty has shown me immeasurable kindness." "It is more than kindness, child," the Empress said softly. "But do not fear, I understand. The heart does not always follow the paths laid out by birth and station." She placed a thin hand on Sofia's arm. "I have never begrudged him the affection he holds for you. It is of a different nature than what we share, but no less pure." Sofia looked up, meeting the older woman's gaze directly. We have never, I know," Maria Anna nodded. "Your honor and his are untarnished. But love exists in many forms, does it not? Not all require physical expression to be profound." Unable to deny the truth in the Empress's words, Sofia simply nodded, tears forming in her eyes. Ferdinand died on June 29, 1875, at the age of 82, a remarkable longevity given his health challenges. Sofia, now 51 with silver threading her dark hair, was at his bedside along with the Empress and a priest. His last words were a verse from Schiller, his favorite poet, murmured so softly that Sofia had to lean close to hear. "Keep true to the dreams of thy youth." After the funeral, with Ferdinand interred in the imperial crypt in Vienna, Sofia prepared to take her leave of Prague Castle. The new emperor, Franz Joseph, had indicated that while the Empress Maria Anna could maintain her household, there was no place for a former kitchen maid turned secretary in the Habsburg family structure. As she packed her modest belongings, books Ferdinand had given her, a pressed rose from their garden walks, carefully saved letters, there was a knock at her chamber door. A palace lawyer entered, looking uncomfortable. "Fräulein Krizek, I am here regarding the late emperor's will." Sofia set down the book she was holding. "His will? Yes. He has left provisions for you that require immediate attention." The lawyer explained that Ferdinand, with characteristic quiet determination, had set aside a generous pension for Sofia, along with ownership of a small property outside Prague, a cottage with gardens and orchards where he had sometimes gone to escape the formalities of the castle. "There is also this," the lawyer said, handing her a sealed letter, "to be delivered only after his death." When the lawyer had gone, Sofia opened the letter with trembling fingers. Ferdinand's handwriting, shaky in his later years but still recognizable, filled the page. "My dear Sofia, if you are reading this, I have finally found the peace that so often eluded me in life. Do not mourn over long. You, who found beauty in humble turnips, will surely find it again in the changing seasons of your days ahead. I write to express what propriety never allowed me to say directly. You have been the unexpected blessing of my later years. Not as emperor and subject, nor as man and woman in the conventional sense, but as two souls who recognized in each other something essential and true. In another life, with different stars governing our births, perhaps our paths might have joined differently. But I do not regret the path we did walk together. You taught me to see the world through unclouded eyes. You spoke truth when others offered only flattery. You created beauty when duty demanded only function. The cottage is yours to use as you wish. Plant your garden. Write your thoughts. Live freely as you could not in my shadow. My only request is that you visit Maria Anna occasionally. She values your companionship more than her pride allows her to express. Remember me not as emperor, but as Ferdinand, who found in a kitchen made the most loyal heart and clearest mind in his empire, with eternal gratitude. Ferdinand Sofia pressed the letter to her heart, tears flowing freely now. Outside her window, the gardens of Prague Castle bloomed in early summer splendor, just as they had when she first arrived. A frightened kitchen made fleeing revolution with the imperial family. In the years that followed, Sofia made the cottage her home, transforming its gardens into a living artwork that local people traveled miles to see. She became known for her botanical knowledge and for the small, exquisite confections she sometimes shared with visitors, delicacies that once graced an emperor's table. Empress Maria Anna visited when her health permitted, the two women finding comfort in shared memories. After the empress's death in 1884, Sofia occasionally received more distinguished visitors, historians researching Ferdinand's reign, artists seeking the unique flowers she cultivated, once even a brief, unofficial call from Emperor Franz Joseph himself, curious about the woman who had meant so much to his uncle. Sofia lived to see the new century dawn, witnessing the world transform around her, railways crisscrossing the empire, electric lights replacing gas lamps, horseless carriages appearing on Prague's streets. Through it all, she tended her gardens and kept her memories, preserving the story of an unlikely friendship that had transcended the rigid boundaries of imperial court life. When she died peacefully in her sleep in 1903, at the age of 79, she was buried according to her wishes in the small churchyard near her cottage. The simple headstone bore only her name, 2 dates, and a line from Schiller that those who knew her story would understand. Keep true to the dreams of thy youth. In her will, she left instructions for her cottage to be maintained as a garden open to the public, where beauty could be found by anyone with eyes to see it. And among her personal papers was found a memoir, sealed and addressed to the Imperial archives, to be opened only after the Habsburg monarchy itself had passed into history. Its title page read simply, "When the Emperor chose the kitchen maid, a true account." When the Austrian Empire fell in 1918, and the sealed memoir was finally opened, the account inside revealed not scandal, but something far more radical. The story of how an emperor had recognized the wisdom and spirit of a woman society deemed insignificant, and how, in their own careful way, they had challenged the boundaries that divided them without ever breaking them. The final page contained words that would eventually be quoted in history books. The true measure of any ruler is not in the territories conquered or riches amassed, but in the ability to see the worth of each soul regardless of station. In this alone, Ferdinand was truly imperial.